Ladies, gentlemen, and gods of all ages, Hades 2 has now been released in early access for a couple of days now, and the overwhelming response that I'm hearing from people is the game is tough. They're having a great time. Everyone is loving it, but it's hard, right? And something that I cannot stress enough, not just for new players, but even for veterans from the original Hades, a lot of people seem to have forgotten over the past 4 years what your first few days of playing are like, and just how much weaker you are to begin with. So while I've given some more general tips for very early game in a previous video, today I want to focus on some more major mistakes that could affect you a bit longer term, or I guess another way of saying it is there are a ton of ways that you can improve your permanent power in between the runs themselves, but some of them are way more important than others, and the paths to get to them aren't necessarily obvious, so basically what I'm going to do is give you some goals to get some hefty long-term power sooner than you might otherwise acquire it. First things first are some extremely major upgrades. If you played the first game, you'll remember that giving nectar to NPCs for the first time unlocks a keepsake. Just to rapid fire a couple of great ones, Odysseus gives you a keepsake with boss damage reduction and also health reduction on the next boss that you fight after equipping it. This one is absolutely incredible, and there's also Skellimaeus' keepsake, which essentially acts as a bonus charge of death defiance, which means you have a literal cheat death. These, for obvious reasons, are invaluable, so especially once you get the upgrade that lets you swap keepsakes in between regions, I heavily recommend using Odysseus if you're struggling with specifically bosses, or Skellies if you just want a big pump of survival in general, and you can swap them in and out as you need to if you know a specific floor has a rougher boss fight on it than the general enemies on it either. And another solid one here is also Arachne's keepsake. This grants you armor on equip and gives you more armor for each location that you finish while still having some armor remaining. This is incredible, especially on the first floor where you can get the Arachne event, which gives you booned armor. This clothing breaks when your armor runs out, but basically it means that you have bonus armor and armor regen from the keepsake that you can actually make the effect last longer for. Then you use this event room and you can make it actually last into like the second floor maybe, which you would otherwise be very difficult to actually do. Again, you can always swap it out when it becomes less useful in between regions. A final one that I really want to mention that you can easily get early is from Nemesis. This gives you a hefty bonus percentage damage to the last enemy that killed you, which is incredible if you're struggling with a specific boss, let's say. So you die to them and then make it back to them on the next run, put this trinket on right before you fight them, and of course this is hugely benefited by the ability to only swap it on when you reach the region, which makes it extremely effective. Moving on from keepsakes then, let's talk about the incantations. Along your runs you will find various materials that you can find, things like seeds that you can grow into plants in the crossroads, and with different gathering tools you can also find further kinds of different resources for this as well. As you progress the story by completing runs, whether successfully or not, it will unlock more incantations through conversations. And while nearly all of them are worth doing, some of them are much higher priority, really, especially if you know what the conditions are to make them appear to begin with. A couple of really important ones that you want to work towards as early as you can then are Consecration of Ashes. This simply shows up once you have upgraded your grasp in the Altar of Ashes enough and just otherwise progressed enough by completing enough runs to progress dialogue with various NPCs, mostly Hecate. But this one is important to get sooner rather than later, because what this does is allow you to actually upgrade your individual tarot cards at the Altar of Ashes, which I'll be talking about in more detail later on in the video. But this is a super important upgrade to get, put it simply. Another incredibly good upgrade to get from here is weapon aspects. If you played the first game, you know what these are. They are sort of somewhat altered playstyles for each of the base weapons of the game, either adding some sort of buff effect or changing a part of the moveset up from the base version, but no matter what, these are just always stronger than base weapons in general, because even just the upgraded base weapon version gets a buff to it in some way that will buff the power. So this is worth investing into once you can, because every run that you do once you have these unlocked can be a lot easier. As for unlocking this one, we actually know how to do this pretty simply. Step 1, unlock every weapon that is in the early access currently, which is everything up to and including the Argent skull. Then the next time that you defeat Hecate, unless there is a specifically higher priority dialogue to happen, she will give you the incantation to unlock aspects of night and darkness. The requirement for this, though, well, is a pile of bronze mostly, which to be fair, you do also need some bronze to craft the 5th weapon to begin with, so we should talk about where bronze comes from, as I'm sure a lot of you have that question at this point. But I would like to emphasize that this is going to be a spoiler, a pretty big one, honestly, for anyone who isn't like 6 or 7 hours into the game, I'd estimate on average at least. So if you aren't desperately looking for bronze, if you don't think that's your next upgrade you should have, skip to the timestamp on screen for the next section. That said, for those of you who do want to know, after you meet Hermes, which should happen within your first 5 or 10 runs, you'll start to follow a secondary story thread about a threat to Olympus on the surface. As you get more conversations with these characters and defeat Hecate after this too, more dialogue will queue up with her that unlocks an incantation called Permeation of Witching Wards. One of the requirements of this is Shadow. shadow, which is something that you unlock the ability to craft after another separate dialogue with Hecate that queues up after that too. This incantation then removes the seal in the exit room for the second gate that has been there the whole time. The normal exit has a prompt that says go down with a downward staircase, but a bit up the steps is an upward staircase that is blocked and it says go up with a question mark. And the reason is once you complete this incantation, you get rid of the seal and you can actually go up there. And I really want to say as little as I can about this because this is one of the coolest surprises I've had with the game, but let's just say bronze is a mineable resource from exiting that upper exit in the first few rooms that you get to there. When you first get here, you'll just slowly be ticking to death. Your health will be draining. That's how the region works, at least to begin with. And that's fine because you can actually just complete like 2 or 3 rooms like this, looking for bronze specifically, going in with a mining pick, then die and come back and do the same thing until you have the bronze that you need. You do unlock the ability to survive properly in this area later, but you don't need to wait for that upgrade to get bronze in the first place, is sort of the point that I'm trying to make here, because I know a lot of people have made that mistake. Next up, just because I am reminded of it being literally between the cauldron and the next thing I want to talk about, always keep your little garden in the crossroads actively cycling through your seeds. If you have seeds, they should be planted and working through them. The plants are all useful in some way, shape, or form, and sometimes it's worth specifically going out of your way to go on runs with the shovel tool equipped, just so you can constantly get a bigger supply of seeds to rotate through in the hub. Moving on to the more important thing that I want to talk about then, we have the Altar of Ashes. Currently in this stage of early access, there are 25 different cards that you can unlock through this system. Each one of these requires you to have unlocked an adjacent card to actually see what it is for it to show up. On top of that, there is the Grasp system, where each card has its own cost, denoted in the top right corner. You can only equip these cards up to your maximum grasp, which you can also separately increase. But the 2 major things that I wanted to talk about here are some really strong cards to unlock as soon as you can, especially as you can't see the unlock path fully from the beginning. You sort of have to go one card at a time, which can lead to it taking longer to reach the actually really genuinely strong ones. But then also longer term, the upgrade system, just to show why it matters so much to get that incantation done when you have it there. For reference, my recommended starting path for your first Arcana card unlocks are number 2 for passive regen on each chamber completed, followed by number 7 for a boost to your maximum health and magic that is actually genuinely quite palpable in the early game, especially when you don't have many other permanent powers going. Then you want number 12, which gives you Death Defiance. I mentioned this effect earlier. It gives you a cheat death essentially, so you come back to life with some of your health restored. And stacking this effect in any way possible to get multiple of them is the single most powerful survival tool in the whole game. And this is super important. Then I would get number 3 for some bonus damage, number 8 for passive magic regen, and then number 13, the Centaur, which will be able to activate with the cards that you have right now as soon as you reach 16 maximum grasp, at which point I recommend also grabbing number 11, the Swift Runner, just for the little speed boost for that last little 1 slot you'll have at that stage. Past that, to call out some more major ones to aim for later on, the strongest ones generally are Awakening cards, which only activate if the rest of your cards meet certain conditions, and they're sort of cool. The Centaur is the first of these that I've led you right to. You can also get number 5, the Messenger, top right, relatively early as well, which you can combo together, which you can activate with just a couple of 1-cost cards put together. But then there are sort of 2 clusters in the bottom that are really important long term, and it helps to know which these clusters are. These are bottom left side. This is all focused around the Change of Fate mechanic, which lets you reroll the reward on a location before entering a set number of times per run. And you can stack a number of these together with the cards that are in this corner and upgrading them. On the bottom right instead, we have your cards focused around boon rarity increase, meaning just increasing the potency of every boon that you will find. Personally, I'm a really big fan of just general rarity increases in this game and this style of game too, but if you are looking to create particularly specific synergies, the Change of Fate's cards bottom left are simply going to be irreplaceable, so it's sort of your choice on what you want to aim for each run. Whether you'd rather have less control over what your synergy is, but know that every boon will be stronger, or if you just want a lot of control to make exactly what you want. Then the other thing here is the upgrade system that I mentioned earlier, and with this, just to express how important it is, you can do things like upgrade the Death Defiance card to give you up to 3 total Death Defiant charges per run, or the Centaur card that we talked about being really strong early. You can upgrade that to be even 5 maximum health and maximum magic increase per 5 locations completed, which is quite literally +1 per room of each stat at that point, which is a surprising amount of defensive and utility scaling gain, especially throughout a long run. Point being, the cards are great, the card system is great, and here are some ways that you can use it to your advantage, and hey, upgrades really are worth unlocking just about as soon as you physically can. Then one final thing, in my video yesterday I had some tips for the first region's boss, Hecate, so I figured today I might as well end off with a couple of tips for the second region's boss for anyone who has gotten walled there. So of course this is your invitation to pop off the video for the day if you are concerned about spoilers for that part of the game. Without further ado then, I have to say I Just absolutely love this boss inside and out from the ground up. Just the first time I've been able to sort of gush about this boss and talk about it because I've been wanting to like not spoil it for people, so forgive me for that. But if you're looking for a couple of easy ways to make this fight just a bit, basically just a pushover, especially if it is what is currently ending your runs consistently, there's a couple of things that you can apply with pretty much any build. The first of which is just consider your order of killing the bosses. In this fight, there are essentially 3 bosses with their own movesets, and as you reach enough damage done to each one of them individually, they will lock up and stop doing their part of the moveset until the next phase. The order that you choose to do this can have massive ramifications, and the best tip I have is get rid of the drummer. Early on, the drummer isn't too irritating, but about 30 seconds into each phase, the drummer will start this back and forth rhythm of a big circle that you need to stay out of, then a big circle that you need to be inside of, and this just goes back and forth and back and forth. It just complicates dodging every other attack in the fight to such a ridiculous degree. So if you can, knock out the drummer before that happens, and that will just make it way simpler. Other than that, one other thing that I want to just absolutely emphasize is when you reach the final phase of the fight, the very last like 10-20% of the health bar, whenever that happens, a bunch of fish will just come charging out at you. Your friends here are either to burst the boss down so fast that the fish can't build up because they will just keep spawning, or to slow them and apply AoE. Use your cast, it will be your best friend at this stage of the encounter. If you're being swarmed by things, use your cast, slow them, stop them, and just try to apply the damage to the boss as safely as you can. Then past that, this one is sort of if you're just really struggling with specifically this boss, and is to actually build for it, which is to build effects that are area of effect. Build Poseidon's Splash radius boons, build Omega move builds or cast builds, get boons that make your attacks bounce or pierce or otherwise just do damage to multiple of enemies at the same time, including these bosses, and you will melt the specific boss in no time flat because you can do damage to all of them at the same time, even if you're just focusing the main one, Scylla, in the clam. And that just about does it for today then. I look back on some of the mistakes that either I've made myself or people I know have made, or just some things that I found through my time playing that I think other players would generally benefit from knowing either how to unlock earlier than they might otherwise, or just by seeing what materials it would take to unlock them so you can start saving up for them a bit earlier rather than having to work towards them only once you know what they actually are. I hope this has helped you all out then, and hopefully you've enjoyed your time here today too. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.